Hi, welcome back to Life is a Treasure podcast. I'm your hostess, Michelle Durand, and this is a bonus episode for the year end 2020. I thought it would be fun to highlight some of the guests that were on the show this past year and just put them all together in one bonus episode. If any of them intrigue your interest and you'd like to listen to the entire episode, you can always find it on the platforms where you listen to podcasts or on the website lifeisatreasure.com under listen to podcast, and I will have the link in the show notes. So I hope that you enjoy this bonus episode with some of our guests that were on the show in 2020. Today I am joined with a guest, and her name is Tracy Swainson.
My journey came through multiple miscarriages. And as I went through that process of supporting women through all of that, I realized that where my healing really needed support was with my unresolved grief. I had never really healed all the issues that came up from the multiple miscarriages. And it was unresolved grief that I realized I really needed to do a lot of work with and just learn to honor myself and accept myself for who I am. I was never able to become a mother. And so coming to that awareness and that understanding and really learning to accept who I am as the woman that I am today, I really struggled with who am I supposed to be if not a mother. That was a big thing for me. And so I went through that healing process and with a lot of support from other amazing women. It made me realize that that's something that so many women really, really needed support with, was unresolved grief.
And today I am joined with a guest, and her name is Deborah Quirk.
My own experience of having an abortion, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I was about 27 years old. I was in Australia as a backpacker at the time. I met this guy who was Irish. Naive. But when you have sex that's unprotected, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And I fell pregnant. And I would say it was probably one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make in my life. And it's that unknown, isn't it? You don't really know how you're going to feel afterwards. How can you know? You've never experienced it before. So I kind of went into it kind of knowing that it wasn't, the right choice for me at that time. Even said to the guy, I feel this is right for me. And he's coming from an Irish background, and the Irish stance on abortion. And so, I remember going to have the abortion, and then afterwards, it's interesting, you don't always, I wasn't really maybe that aware of how much it had impacted me until one day I was at work and I just couldn't stop crying all the time. And my boss at the time kind of took me to one side, and we're still friends to this day. And I was only just thinking the other day how grateful I am that he did that for me. He was the one that pushed me to go and see someone. And so there I was. I went to see a kinesiologist, and it's interesting that it took me on this journey because one of the things that she said to me is you've got a lot of anger inside you towards men.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't think so. And then she muscle tested and she said to me, and she said, no, it wasn't your anger. It was your mother's anger. And this is the thing that led me to kinesiology, if I'm honest. She said to me, your mother was either raped or attacked. And I didn't know this at the time. I was thinking, this could have put me on another spiral. But luckily, for some reason, I'm still here to tell the story. But the thing that led me to the kinesiology is I need to know if that was the truth. So I know now, obviously, with my healing, that yes, you can take on emotions from generations, but to say very specifically you were raped or attacked was a very strong statement. Yeah, so I would never do that. I would never put those words into someone else's mouth. But I actually was suicidal, if I'm honest. I couldn't stop the mind chatter, and so that led me on my own journey. I think to be able to heal myself.
On this episode, I'm joined with a guest. Her name is Danny J. Johnson, also known as Danny J.
And I had just started becoming sexually active. In fact, at this point, I probably had sex like 4 times with my boyfriend. And the second day I was there, the psychiatrist called me in and he sat me down and he just said, hey, your pregnancy test came back and it's positive. And instantly I said, well, I'm having an abortion. Like there was I didn't even have a second to think about it. And honestly, I didn't even think that I was pregnant. I was supposed to start my period like any day. So, and we had been using protection except the one time, obviously, pulling out and everything. I'm like, well, of course this happens to me. And so I just said I was going to have an abortion. And of course, the doctor was like, well, why do you want to do that? And I'm like, I'm going to kill myself anyway. So why does it matter? That was really my mindset. It was, if I'm going to kill myself, it doesn't matter if I kill the baby too. Like it only makes the most sense to me. And so that's really where my mindset was. And I was, it didn't mean anything to me. Nothing meant anything to me. Life was pretty meaningless to me. I hated everyone, hated everything, especially myself. And after a couple of days, so now I'm in the intake and I'm starting to have meetings with counselors and psychiatrists. One of the counselors there, she convinced me to tell my parents, because in the state of Nevada, which was where I was, you don't need parental consent to have an abortion. So my plan was to leave once I got checked out of there and to do it on my own, and nobody would ever know the difference. And then I would kill myself and then life would go on for everyone else but me. And so she convinced me, or she made it seem like I should tell them, even if I was going to have the abortion. And so we made a plan for my parents to come. We'd have a meeting, and she was going to be there and facilitate this meeting. But the counselor was late. My mom got there early. And so my mom was waiting there. We were waiting for my dad to get there, waiting for the counselor. And my mom just starts like, well, what is this about? What are we here for? And then she goes, are you pregnant? And I was just like, well, that's what I was going to tell you about. And she lost it. She started screaming at me, she was trying to hit me. They ended up having to take her in another room because she was like going to pull my hair out. And I was like, see, I knew it. This is exactly why. Nobody should know. I didn't want to say anything. And it just like validated why I should have an abortion and why this wasn't going to work. And so after she calmed down, my dad got there, the counselor got there, and I was pissed at the counselor. Like, look what you made me do. Went back in the meeting with my parents, and my mom was just glaring at me the whole time. Like she hated me. And my dad was like, okay, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I'm having an abortion. And my dad was like, no, you can't do that. Like, we don't believe in that. And I was like, sorry, but it's not your decision, And so I had a chip on my shoulder and I was angry. I was angry at everyone. And I was pretty determined that was the way it was going to go. And so I met some people in this facility who had a car, had money. And so I made the plan. There was the yellow pages. I made an appointment, and I had the plan to do this as soon as I'm going to say escaped, but as soon as I was discharged. And so I had the plan to go, and it was on a Wednesday. And the day before I was supposed to go have the abortion, my parents had set up a meeting with this eating disorder clinic. They were talking about sending me away. It was a place in Utah, and it was like a year-long program. And I guess they had been referred. So they took me to this meeting. They were supposed to meet with the doctors and counselors, and then they sent me into a room with this lady that worked there. And so I'm just sitting there, arms crossed, like, this is, so stupid. Why am I here? And this woman, we just started talking, and she was so kind. And her name was Heather, and she was, I want to say 27 years old, maybe. And she had 2 children, and she told me how she had been raped by her brother's friend. And that now she ended up being anorexic, and now she couldn't have kids anymore because of her eating disorder. And she wanted kids so bad. And just out of nowhere, I just blurted out, I want you to have my baby. And I remember in the back of my mind, like, it was like there was 2 people. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're getting an abortion. And she's like, what? Are you serious? And I was like, yes, I want you to have my baby. And it was like my mouth was speaking, but my head was like, what the hell are you doing? We already have a plan. And I just felt so compelled and so touched by her. And she just seemed like such a sweet woman, and it seemed unfair. And so I left, and we exchanged numbers, and I left. I remember calling my boyfriend, and I said, so I met this lady and I want to give her our baby. He's like, okay. And so it was like, I'm just as confused as you, but I just decided to do this. And I remember, funny enough, is prior to that, my dad said, why don't you just place the baby for adoption when I was saying I was going to have an abortion? And I said, there's no way. I'm not going to, one, I have an eating disorder. I'm not going to get fat and have this pregnancy and then just give my child away and not know where she or he is and not know where she's going and not know anything about, like, there's no way I can do that. Absolutely not. I was like, I would rather just have the abortion than to go through all that. So the fact that I said this, it was another big thing, because to have an eating disorder, to have this massive fear of gaining weight and to go through pregnancy is like, you know, what am I doing? I'm going to make this worse. So I made the decision, and about 2 months later, the woman called me bawling, and she's like, Danny, we can't do the adoption because private adoptions are $50,000 and we don't have the money. And so now I'm way too far along in the pregnancy to have an abortion. And I'm like, I do not know what to do. And now I know I'm having a little girl. And so I'm really faced with a new decision of, do I still do an adoption or do I keep her? And, you know, ultimately I always say, you know, when you have an unplanned pregnancy, you have three hard decisions. You know, you have abortion, which is not an easy decision. You have adoption, which is not an easy decision, or you have to keep the child, which is also not an easy decision, especially when you're 15 years old. And I remember just thinking, like, she did not ask to be born. And it's unfair to have her grow up in a house that's so volatile, and there was so much fighting and so much crap going on. I'm like, this is not a place to raise a baby, you know? And then my own thoughts of, like, how will I be able to work and how can I provide and where will I go? And if I have her, maybe I'll be stuck here forever. And I wanted to get out so bad. But on the flip side, I'm like, I don't want to give her up. I don't want to just have her, you know, give her to strangers and never know what happened to her. And so how do I decide? And so I found an agency, and I reached out and just to get some information. And my biggest fear was, you know, I think we all hear about the old days of where the mother has the baby, they whisk the baby away, don't see it, don't know where it went. And then, like, you hear these horror stories of, like, they went to a terrible home. And I was like, I just can't. And so I was relieved to find out that adoption's changed a lot. And even since I placed, adoption has changed a lot. And so they told me they have something now called semi-open adoption, where I can choose her family. And I would be able to get pictures and letters every month until she turned 1, and then once a year until she turned 3. And then after that, no contact. And that gave me so much peace, because I thought, well, at least I can know where she's at, and I could just know if I made the right decision. Ironically, you still have so many questions, right? But I ended up after school, like every single day, going to read profiles, families. You know, I went through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families of, like, who is it going to be? And then, you know, the pressure to choose the quote unquote right people, and how do you know from a single letter? And so I didn't even pick them out until literally her due date. Thank goodness she was late, because I was like, I was going through and nobody felt like the right people. And finally picked out her family, and I was able to meet them. I had her 5 days after her due date, and then we had her for 7 days before they got her, because it was an out-of-state adoption. And I was told, you know, by a lot of people, don't hold her, you're going to get attached, don't look at her. You know, all of those stories. And for me, that was not an option. You know, I knew what was going to happen, but I couldn't just not see her. I couldn't not hold her. I couldn't not, you know and be able to just feel like this is the right thing to do. And so, you know, we were in the hospital for 3 days, and then she went to foster care overnight, and then we met at the office. And so I saw her for another day. And I got to spend time with her and change her clothes and change her diapers and kind of, like, spend that time. And when I met her parents, I remember thinking, oh my God, what if I meet them? I hate them. And I changed my mind. And I was like, and I remember just being so nervous. And once I met them, I felt so much peace. And I thought that the day I left, I'd be bawling, but I went away. I met them. We talked for about 2 hours, and I left just feeling so calm and so peaceful. And I wasn't upset that day. There's definitely weeks after, lots of crying and lots of mourning, but I felt like they were the right people. You know, they were the right people for her. And, you know, all that to say that during this time was a lot of tears, a lot of pain. The one thing that I just now, like within the last year, have really been able to experience was grieving that. Somebody loses a child, they get to grieve. But I think when it comes to maybe abortion even or adoption, is that it was almost expected that once she was like gone with her family, that I was just supposed to get on with my life and pretend it never happened. And it did happen. And, my body is I'm still producing milk. I'm like, my body's still healing. It obviously happened. And yet I'm supposed to pretend on the outside that it didn't. And so I struggled with that. And then I struggled with, in my early 20s when my friends were getting married and having babies, on purpose, and the celebration, right? Like you have a baby shower and everybody's excited. But when I got pregnant, it was not something to celebrate. And so I struggled with that for a long time. But ultimately, that was my journey and my path. And, there's so many things you go through the years of still wondering, did I do the right thing? Because after she was 3 and we lost contact, it's like, I was like, the thing that I would hold on to was like waiting for that year mark and I get the pictures and see how she was. And, there's always that wondering of how is she doing and is she going to hate me? And tons and tons of questions. Kind of following my own heart on that. And I reached out to her biological dad, or not her biological, her adoptive dad. Because of the internet, I had actually found out like who they were. And I got her information. I got an email and I found out her address for college and ended up sending her like a big gift box for when she got to college. And I didn't hear anything. And so then I'm like, oh, great. Like you send a present and then you're like, well, okay, now what? So that was pretty rough. And then I emailed her. Or maybe she finally emailed us back. I think she said like 6 months later, she's like, I'm sorry, I was really overwhelmed. And, I had to give her grace. I'm like, okay, she's a teenager and who knows what she wants. And finally, I found out that she was going to be in California at the same time I was going to be in California for a speaking gig. And she had said in her email something about, she had talked to her roommates and she was asking them their opinion. Like, what should I do? Should I meet her? Should I not? Should I talk to her? And they were just like, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. And she said, I just wish somebody would tell me what to do. And I remember I read that line over and over and I was like, maybe I just need to tell her to meet me. So I was going to California and I just sent the email and I said, hey, we should meet. And I was kind of expecting no response because she hadn't responded for, months and she wasn't very responsive. And she immediately replied back and she just said, sure. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I was ready for that. I was kind of just hoping maybe, I don't know. So we ended up planning to meet. We met at an IHOP on 1 p.m. on a weekday. And, I wanted somewhere quiet. It's so funny because I think when I had her, I only had 2 visions of her, right, as a baby. And then this imagined reunion in the future of like what she might look like as an adult and what this reunion would look like. And so in my head, it's always like the TV of like, you're in the airport with a sign and balloons and you like see each other and hug and cry. And so of course it was not like this. It was a freaking IHOP. And I already knew what she looked like because I had stalked her on social media. So I had an idea already. So it wasn't a surprise. And, I was waiting and I was nervous and I was waiting for her to come in. And I was like looking down at my phone because she was late. And then I just heard her voice behind me. And she just says, hey there. And I turned around and I remember the first thing that like really stood out to me was her voice. Because I had seen like pictures, I'd seen pictures and I knew what she looked like, but I never heard what she sounded like. And hearing her voice was like one of the, just one of like the highlights of that. And, I was so scared. I'm like, do I give her a hug? What if I freak her out? And so I gave her a hug and I was like, okay, don't do this too long. And then she just kept holding me. And that was really, really amazing. And we ended up talking for 2 hours and it was really fantastic because she was so grateful. She wasn't, I wanted to be open to being okay with her being mad at me or angry. I realized like she's going to have her feelings about this and all I can do is answer her as best as I can. But she was very grateful. And she said she grew up exactly where she thought she should have. And we just had some laughs at like our similarities and things that we liked. And it was really, really cool. And then since then, it's been a couple of years now. It's just been slow. I've really tried to ease into the relationship and not force anything. And, I'm not trying to come back and be like, okay, I'm your mom now. So it's been slow, but it's been really, really, amazing. And I think I'm really lucky that it turned out to be so positive, because I know it doesn't always turn out that way.
Today, I'm joined with a guest, Nikki Johnson.
I guess to start with my infertility story, I always wanted to be a mom. You think about when you are growing up that someone will say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I always remember saying, I want to be a mom. Mm-hmm. First, IVF procedure. And our first attempt failed. And of course, heartbroken. And during this time, two of my very, very good friends both got pregnant. Wow. And one of them was a high school friend. And I can remember, but it was just really hard to go to the hospital and be that good, excited friend for her. Because also at the time we chose, and like I said, like it has been almost 14 years ago. But I feel like things were really different then. It wasn't something that we really talked a lot about. Right. And so my husband and I chose to really not talk about it a lot. We didn't tell a lot of our family, and probably only one good friend that I really talked to about it. And it was just really hard to have her, to be excited for her, because I wanted to, but I still had all this pain. Yeah. And so thankfully though, our second transfer of IVF, we were able to get pregnant. And so after, I want to say 5 years of going through infertility, we were finally able to get pregnant. Wow. and had a baby girl. And she's such a blessing and just perfect in every way. And I can still say that 13 years later.
Oh, that...
We'll see after the teenage years, but...
Today, I am joined with a guest, and her name is Ashley Buggy.
Because we had planned on spending the rest of our lives together. And, like any young family, we had a 1 and a 3-year-old at home, and we just wanted to enjoy everything that life had to offer, never expecting anything like that could actually happen to us. We just weren't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for it. He was a part of this diving class. He had big plans of where this diving class was going to take him, where it was going to lead him. When he got out of the Navy after 20 years, he wanted to open a scuba diving shop and teach, students how to use this rebreather. Diving consumed him. His list of things he loved went me, and then the kids, and then scuba diving, maybe sailing right in there as well. But diving just was a part of him. There was nothing else that compares. And scuba divers out there understand that. Like when you're under the water, there's just nothing else that compares to that feeling that you have there. And so I understood it, and I encouraged it, and I knew that he wanted this so bad. And so he had signed up for this class, and he was taking the class. He went, it was a Sunday morning, he woke up, and a lot of stuff had happened right before that with the class getting canceled and rescheduled. But he woke up and he drove out to the dive site, got on the boat, and about 2 hours later, I was at home, 6 months pregnant at the time, with our third child. And I'm sitting on the couch getting the kids ready to go to run some errands to get some stuff for the baby, and my phone rings. And, it's a Sunday morning. Normally I wouldn't answer the phone for an unknown number, probably a telemarketer of some sort. and the kids are in, the background trying to get them ready and out the door. And I just thought, years of military deployments, when that unknown number pops up, if you think that your spouse is in any sort of danger, you're going to answer the phone. And, I knew he was diving. There's always a chance something could happen underwater. Something inside told me to answer the phone. And so I answered it, kind of expecting it to be a telemarketer. And they said, Mrs. Buggy. And I said, yes. And he said, this is the manager of the dive shop. Where are you? I need to tell you there's been an accident on your husband's dive boat. And I said, what? And I sat right up, and he said, where are you? I said, what are you talking about? And he said, we need to come get you. Are you at home? Are you with your kids? Where are you? And I just started shouting no. Like, as a diver myself, I know if there's a scuba diving accident, chances are it's not, I cut myself or something small happened. Otherwise, he would have been calling me. And so I just, worst case scenario in my head, he didn't know anything. I hung up the phone. They came and picked me up. We drove to the emergency room. And I don't know, about 20 minutes later, I found out that he didn't make it. For me, the worst day of my life is the day my husband died when I was 6 months pregnant and we lived in the middle of an ocean. But the worst day of somebody else's life might be the day that their dog died, or they lost their job, or, they were forced to move somewhere. And there's really no comparing. I know people think there is, but there's really no comparing what I've gone through to what you've gone through. If it's the worst day of your life, it's the worst day of your life. And I understand that feeling, and I understand the need to find a way through that and to push forward regardless of the circumstances. And so I feel like just sharing the worst day of my life and how I'm figuring it out, people can resonate with whatever that is.
And today I have a very special guest. She's also my daughter, Courtney Sprawls. Courtney is a certified health and wellness coach, certified personal trainer, certified yoga teacher, and she has a bachelor's degree in health psychology.
Everything we do is a practice. So physical exercise would be a practice of moving the body. Mental exercise, whether it's reading or having a stimulating conversation, is something that we are always getting better at. And sometimes there's an ebb and a flow where we backtrack, and sometimes we have those stagnant times where our mind feels a little bit more cloudy, or there's those moments of clarity where you feel just so aligned. And that is a continued practice. We could talk a little bit about the time we're in right now. It feels like so much space right now to practice, but sometimes practicing doesn't always mean there's a goal. It's a thing that you continue to do to feel some sense of openness. So when you have that physical and mental practice, there's also that spiritual component of a practice where you show up on like a yoga mat, for example. You're getting that physical, that mental, and that spiritual aspect, and all of it is something that you have to continue to practice in order to not necessarily elevate, but just to understand yourself better.
Well, everyone, I hope that you have enjoyed this bonus episode and the recap of some of the guests that were on the show. There were so many others that I just couldn't put all of them in this bonus episode, but I hope that you've enjoyed them. I hope that they've given you some inspiration and some encouragement for whatever you might be going through in your own life. And I thought it would be a great idea to write a little something to share with you all from my heart as we end 2020. So I'd like to share what I wrote before I started recording this podcast. 2020 is coming to an end. What a trip it has been. I don't think anyone could have predicted the strife that it would bring. Worldwide pandemic causing major fear that the end of toilet paper was very near. We managed to get through the crisis at hand, some of us losing loved ones that were very dear. Our fears turning into anger with all of the new demands, as we couldn't even touch those that were near. 2020 symbolizes clear vision, yet it was anything but clear. Every day brought different news our way. It was a challenge to make it through the days. And here we are entering into 2021. everyone praying that it will be a better one. We can leave the past behind now and seek the treasures to be found. Sending you all peace, love, and joy. Happy New Year!